14. And what are we doing today, Dan?
Yeah, we're giving them a little short one. We're not going to give them a full top 10 this time. We'll give you a little top 5. We're going to give you some insight on some of our top 5 MMA fighters of all time. We haven't got too much into MMA yet on our podcast, but it's something that I think we're not experts, we're not applying for no analyst jobs, but we've been watching UFC for a long time, and I feel like we're as knowledgeable about UFC as we are about anything that we've spoken about so far.
Absolutely. High school days, UFC was so influential in our lives, obviously, with the video games, but just all of us hanging out, paying for pay-per-views. It's funny, before we do this list, me and you also had something we used to do back in the day when we used to Photoshop or use Paint and put some of our favorite fighters. So I went back on my Facebook and I
Oh,
have a thing of my
nice.
I have a thing of my favorite fighters I sent you, and the list is just so hilarious for the time. Um, some of the
Right.
guys, some of the guys on there was a young John Jones when we first saw him fight.
Yeah.
Um, Tito Ortiz was on my thing.
Or
Um,
cheese and
Brandon
wine, baby. Cheese and wine.
Brandon Vera was on my
And
list.
Vera.
Uh,
Yes.
Frank Frank Mir was on my list.
Yeah.
I think Nate Diaz was on my list.
Yeah.
Um, Joe Stevenson, Joe Daddy
Oh, yes.
Stevenson.
I know you're a big Joe Stevenson. That motherfucker could squirt blood out of his head like nobody
Yeah,
else.
BJ Penn beat the fuck out of him. Yo.
Dude, do you remember the blood? It was literally
Yeah,
it's like, oh my God.
Joe Daddy Stevenson. It's like the weirdest, like top 10. But how times have changed from then to now. So,
Are you saying that none of these
obviously,
guys you named are on your top 5?
no. Well, we'll
Really?
see. We'll see. We'll
Oh
see.
my God. How things have changed when you're not mentioning Nate Diaz and Frank Mir on your top 5 and Tito?
We'll see. We'll see. Because top five is different from top 10. Obviously, like you said, it's interchangeable, right?
Yeah.
But we will start with number five, and I will go first.
All right, leader
Um,
off.
my number five is a fighter. I think when I first watched the UFC, this was someone I got behind right away. The way he walked out, he was very funny, very comedic. He can knock you out, with one punch. I think we both loved him when we first started watching the UFC. So he's one of my favorite fighters of all time. That's why he's at number five. He's not the best fighter, but that is Quentin Rampage
Oh,
Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah. What can you say about this guy? Comes out chain swanging. You know he you know
Dude.
he woo. He howls like a wolf. Um, Obviously, not the best technical fighter, not the best wrestler, but a really good entertainer. And I remember
Yeah.
laughing at a lot of the stuff he used to do. He used to hump a lot of reporters. His post fight was always funny, whether he won or lost. That was one of the fighters that we really first got behind, and we used to worry about when he was fighting. Certain, we even worried about when he fought Matt Hamill. We are like, oh, Rampage
Yeah.
hasn't been the same. He had that close fight with Keith Jardine, and it was like, oh man, he's not the same guy. Matt Hamill shouldn't beat him. Matt Hamill's gonna wrestle him and take him down. Rampage fought really well, actually. He stopped the takedowns, and then he fought Ryan Bader, and then he lost. And it was just one of those guys that we really, really got behind when we first started watching UFC. And I remember watching when he knocked out Chuck Liddell to win the belt, and I thought we should have seen a rematch with him and Forrest Griffin. Um,
Yeah. Definitely.
Man, that fight was actually more close than people thought it was. I know there was a lot of leg kicks that did damage because Rampage doesn't check his leg kicks, but
Never. Yeah.
I remember too when John first won the belt. You and I, when they matched him up a Rampage, we were very afraid for John, and we didn't know who we wanted to win because the first time we saw John fight, we knew right away that guy was going to be special.
Yeah,
We,
yeah.
we knew it. We knew it right away. Right when I remember right when we watched him fight. What was it, Rudiker? I think he fought Gabe Rudiker. Was that his first UFC fight?
Oh no, it was a nobody. It was a guy with an Italian name, I remember. And then he got
Okay,
Bonner after. I think that.
yeah. But I think it's when we saw him fight Bonner. He suplexing him right away. We were like, this guy is
Oh,
legit.
am I losing you?
Yeah, we were like, this guy is legit.
Uh-oh.
What happened? You lost me?
Uh-oh. Shoot.
What happened? I can hear you.
Oh no, did I cut out?
No, I can hear you. I hear you.
Shit.
Oh, you got out. Well, we are live. 5 round in the UFC lightweight division.
Technical difficulties, folks. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
We can hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, now he's gone. So yeah, I'll keep talking here. Dan's having some technical difficulties. Number 5 for sure. Quentin Rampage Jackson, one of my favorite fighters. Obviously, him moving up to heavyweight didn't work too good for his career, but still one of my favorite fighters, one of the funniest fighters, one of the coolest, realest fighters you'll ever see. So number 5 for me is Quentin Rampage Jackson.
There we go. Did I cut out there?
Well, I could hear you, but then you froze for a second. Yeah,
Oh shit. I was like, oh
but
god, what's happening?
you're number 5, buddy. Let me hear it.
I came right back at the perfect time. Yeah, my number 5. I actually was debating having Rampage here. Obviously, growing up, like he was one of our main guys. Fuck, I wanted to mention when you're talking about him there. What a frustrating fucking guy to watch. You're just watching Rampage. You're like, just fucking throw a jab, set that hook up, dude. Set that fucking hook up.
Especially when he fought Rashad. They had that big feud.
Yeah,
I loved Rashad too, but he really came off as an asshole.
he did.
Rampage was very hesitant in that fight. If he would have just unloaded his hands, he would have cracked Rashad, but he never did. He did drop
I think
him, but it was a little too late, man.
yeah. I think the problem was like Rampage, just one of those guys. Like you always didn't know. You never knew what Rampage was going to show up. Were you going to get fat Rampage, fat out of shape Rampage? In hindsight, we were talking about that Jones fight. You hear him talk. Have you ever seen that interview where he's talking about where he trained so hard for that fight? This is the first time he was like super confident, like in his training, and he's like, I'm gonna whoop this guy's ass. Like if he would have trained like that for all his fights, like who knows what his record would have looked like.
How the hell did he beat Machida though?
Yeah, Machida looked like shit too. Do you remember Machida looked out of shape in that fight? I thought.
Yeah, but I thought Machida won though. So did Rampage, but
yeah, I remember there was a lot of clinching on the fence in that fight. Was there not?
yeah. But you know what we should have seen? We should have definitely seen Rampage for Shogun in the UFC as well. That would have been
that as well.
because Shogun and Vanderlei really got Rampage at that peak when it was kind of just him as just a straight boxer. He didn't really do much else, right? And then it would have been nice to see a more not complete, but a better version of Rampage fight them in the UFC. But those guys were coming in very, very injury prone at that time. Shogun was coming off of surgery. Vanderlei was not the same guy that from Pride to the UFC. Not at all was he the same. Remember when we watched him get knocked out by Chris Lieben and we were so pissed?
What was he thinking getting in there with Lieben? Like he plays right into Lieben's game plan. I know he thinks I'm Vanderlei Silva. I can go in there. I can bang with Chris Lieben, but he goes in there reaching out with both arms like a zombie for a Muay Thai clinch, just eating fucking uppercuts right up the middle. Like,
yeah, just a complete dummy when it came to game plan. But he just likes to swing it, right? He likes to swing it, throw bombs, and he used to have a chin until Dan Henderson cracked it.
Yeah, I mean, God, the guy's taking so many blows. He used to be a half-what human-looking person too.
Yeah, didn't Dana always call Chris Cyborg Vanderlei?
Oh, their faces both look like just walking scar tissue. Like,
oh God. All right, buddy, give me your number 5, yo. Shit.
I never find out. So I was gonna have Rampage, but I was on the fence between these two guys because I find myself in recent years leaning more towards him. You mentioned him already, and that's Sugar Rashad Evans. Um,
Oh,
he's a guy that is only fully appreciated by people that like really enjoyed the UFC as much as we did at that time period at his peak. I think it's forgotten now because his career just hit such a downside so quickly. It seemed like he peaked and then became kind of a scrub so quickly,
yeah,
right? Like he lost the Jones fight and it just never came together. He became one of those guys that just was going to get knocked out by the young up and comers every time he went out. But Rashad in his prime was a real pioneer of what you expect to see from a fighter in today's age in the UFC. He was one of those first guys that could do a little bit of everything. He was deadly with his on the ground. He was deadly on his feet.
yeah,
He had great footwork. He wasn't just. I mean, those early UFCs and even up until the late 2010s, there was a lot of those guys that their stand up was so rudimentary. They were like standing flat foot. They didn't have much footwork. Didn't have much head movement. Rashad had all of that. He was super smooth, super slick.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I think I didn't appreciate it at the time too during that Rampage feud because I was such a Rampage fan. I wanted Rampage to win that. In hindsight, like, why wasn't I cheering for Rashad? Rashad was the guy that was there. He wasn't filming movies. He was busting his ass. He was just as cool, really. Like, his
yeah.
whole gimmick was pretty badass. Like, plus he had that classic, the nipple pinching before the fights and stuff like that.
That was all. That
It
was
was
all those Jackson guys.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Rashad, a guy like younger fans don't appreciate him for how good he was, but when he was at his peak in light heavyweight, people were saying like, I mean, this is before John came around. Stuff people were like, this is as good a light heavyweight as we've ever seen in the UFC.
yeah, he was actually the guy that got me into watching UFC because I was flipping through the channels one day, and I don't want to say it, but the pay per view was on, and I was able to watch it. That's all I'm saying. But he was on there, and he was fighting Chuck Liddell. And
Yes.
I'd seen Chuck Liddell before, but give you this, I wasn't a UFC fan, and I remember, I was going for Rashad because I'm like, yo, let me go for this little black guy. Chuck was a bigger guy, looked scary. He looked scarier than Rashad, and Chuck went for that uppercut or whatever he went for, and Rashad swung faster than him, connected, knocked the daylights out of him, really changed Chuck's
Yes.
career. Chuck was never the same after that fight. And then
No.
I remember following it then and watching Rashad win the lightweight title, um, and then him losing it. I've really followed his career closely after that. So a good pick, man, a Hall of Famer. Again, a guy like you said, really went downhill quick after that Jones fight.
Yeah.
He lost to a lot of guys that he probably shouldn't have. Anthony Smith KO'd him. Um, a few other guys that were, not on his level in his prime were able to get him out of there quite easy. But in that transition to that John fight, like I remember he murdered Tito. He beat a couple guys
Mm,
that were really good, and then we had that grudge match. What a good hype that was for that match. But John's range and his ability to wrestle was just way, way too much for even Rashad. Like that was the first time we seen Rashad in that era when he left Jackson's and he went to the Black
Billions.
Zillions. Yeah, he was ripped. He had six pack. He never had that beforehand. So he was doing a lot of the stuff right. I think is just like you said, that transition from that older style to the newer generation guys that could just do it all. They're flashy, and he just wasn't able to transition at his age.
Yeah, but he had the upper hand on all those like old school guys that were like limited in their
Yeah.
skill set. Once the new guys came around and they were just as well rounded as him, yeah, he kind of just became another guy. But at the same time, age, wear and tear.
Yeah, wear and tear, especially in a sport like that. Once you lose your speed and your hand-eye coordination, um, it's tough to be a fighter, man. But again, number four now. My number four favorite fighter comes in a fighter that's currently fighting. He's fighting for the BMF title. Never in a boring fight. One of the best boxers in the UFC, not if not the best boxer, and that's the Diamond, Dustin Poirier.
Okay,
I remember,
nice.
I remember seeing him at flyweight and he was having, a little bit of trouble. He lost to a
Yeah,
couple guys he should have beat. He moved up. Michael Johnson knocked him out, and we thought, okay, that's it. That's it for Dustin Poirier. Really changed everything about his game, changed his movement, his head movement, his lateral movement. He's very slick with his boxing. He does get tagged a lot though. His chin has withstood a lot of big punches from a lot of guys. He likes to brawl a little too much, but I think that's what makes him very exciting.
yeah,
I initially thought Poirier was a lot better on the ground. I thought he was going to do a lot better against Habib than he was going to get choked out so fast. But and Oliveira was able to get him out too. But in that fight, he was just throwing too much. I think he thought he could knock Charles out from his previous fights. But man, is Poirier such a good fighter. If he fights smart, he should be able to beat Justin Gaethje, no problem. Um,
yeah,
Stay lateral, don't stay in front of him. Use your footwork, use your head movement. Throw those power punches. I think he's able to get Gaethje out of there, but we'll
yeah.
see. Right? But
I don't think those are the punches that Gaethje can withstand. Those Poirier punches harder than anybody in that division.
yeah, and he truly is probably the best boxer in that division. Um, Whether or not Connor is out of his prime, past his prime, he's still a guy on the feet to be, reckoned with. And Poirier's able to get in there, really use
Yeah,
his angles well, counter well. Um, just a great MMA fighter. Um, it would be nice to
I,
him to hold the title instead of interim title, but
yeah,
hopefully he's able to get the BMF. I like Gaethje as well, but for number four, Dustin Poirier for me, man, he went through a journey. He's been through ups and downs, the go arounds, and now he's at the top of the division, at the top of his game. I don't think he can beat Islam, so he'll probably be the top two or three in that division until he finally retires.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what an excellent fighter and very, yeah, like you said, very had a journey. He's very seasoned experience. We were watching
Mhm.
him back in high.
Yeah, we were, and that he was having a rough career at flyweight. He was cutting a lot of weight. Like he looks totally different now than at flyweight.
It's amazing the guys like you see the guys that like they've been around forever, but some of them, those years are so hard on them, their bodies fall apart by the end of it. They're shells of what they used to be. And then you have these other guys that like you didn't think that they were going to be superstars earlier in their career. They don't have their bodies like regress like other fighters. Instead, they're just building their minds and their skill sets with this experience over the years, like see like your Oliveira's, your Poiriers, and they put together these wild runs late in their careers.
Yeah, especially a guy like Matt Brown. I remember
Yeah,
before he started.
yeah, that's another great one.
Before he started that crazy run, he was like 15 and 15 or like 13
Yeah,
like but he went on and fought all those top guys. He beat some. He lost close fights to a lot of those top guys at that time. Just crazy. Even Anthony Smith had a shit record. He went and beat on a couple older legends, Rashad, Shogun, a lot of those guys that were kind of past their prime. But another guy that really honed his skill sets, and I think right now he talks a little bit too much than he does in the octagon. He probably could have beat Johnny Walker if he actually fought, but those are
yeah,
whatever. But anyways, Dustin Poirier, a journeyman that made himself into a superstar for sure.
yeah, yeah. I like that pick. That's your number four. You said that's number four.
Mhm. That is
Okay.
number four.
Alrighty. So my number four pick, going to one of the greatest fighters of all time, someone who gave us endless memories watching fights back in the day. Someone we always look forward, anticipate every single fight. That's Anderson the Spider Silva.
Hmm. No,
I
I
mean, fuck.
remember. I remember. Man, I remember when we used to play the first UFC game, and
Oh yeah,
we put him on the hardest difficulty, and we let our
and
we
got
made
one
a
win on him.
yeah we couldn't. I finally knocked him out. Remember, it was like
Hours of playing
yeah, we were playing for hours, probably about 6 to 8 hours trying to beat this man with a made up character.
with
Oh
all
my
the respect.
goodness!
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell him tell him the story about when we watched Chill versus Anderson and how what did we do afterwards.
we were so shook because at that time, I mean, Anderson Silva was, I mean, he had an aura of untouchability. Like, as much as I say John Jones is the greatest fighter of all time, and he had an aura of untouchability that was beyond John Jones. It was on like a Khabib level where you just didn't think that there was any human being that could step foot in the ring with this guy, and like he wouldn't just be able to do whatever he wanted. Like
Yeah,
he seemed like a superhero. He would, at the time, is like we hadn't seen as many crazy knockouts as he's seen now. He was doing things that no one had ever seen before,
yeah,
and then you get Chael Sonnen, who, yeah, he had he had a big win against like Nate Marquardt to get that title shot, I think it was.
yeah. But we're talking about again. We just talked about journeyman. Chill was also a guy with a journeyman record, so we thought Anderson was just gonna run through this guy.
Yeah, and then he comes out there and just grinds out, beats the hell out of Anderson Silva for 4.5 rounds, just grinds
Yeah,
the shit out of him. And then Anderson just pulls out that clutch triangle, which, you know, at the time, everyone was like, oh, how clutch is Anderson Silva? In hindsight, people are kind of like, well, the triangle's like Chael Sonnen's Achilles heel, essentially. Like, I could triangle then probably. But what was I gonna say? Fucking yeah, I remember us watching that fight and like we want Anderson to win. Anderson won, but still, I remember us walking around town after like just so shook, like just like it was like figuring out that like Superman was just a regular guy. Like we were just like couldn't believe we were so disappointed. We're like he we really just saw that. We just saw him do that to Anderson. Like,
yeah. Because what happened was you were working the late shift at your work, so
yeah,
I had
Chrysler
watched the
Center.
fight previously, and you came home and you watched it, and then we both messaged. Must have been like 1 or 2 in the morning,
Yeah,
and we were talking about it, and we're like, "You want to meet up?" And you're like, "Yeah." And we walked around the town till like 4:30 in the morning.
yeah,
We couldn't believe it. We were just like, "He's not." We were just saying he's human. He's
yeah,
like he's beatable. Like it was a time when he used to say it himself, and we believe it. The only one that can beat me is my clone.
yeah,
That's what he
yeah.
would say, and that's one of the most badass things you can ever hear. Then the reporter Anderson, who would you want to fight next? Who do you think would be able to beat you? And he said my clone. Like
God, I do really wish Anderson would have maintained the mystique. Anderson was a guy I didn't want to see old Anderson. Like I get there
yeah,
was money in the fight. I wish Anderson would have hit Belfort with that front kick and retired.
yeah. The thing with Anderson is, I think he just loves fighting so much. He's one of those
That's all he
guys
knows.
that I think when he's in training, he probably does a lot of great things. But when it gets to
Mm.
the octagon, like Uriah Hall should have never been able to beat Anderson Silva.
No, never.
Cannonier should have never been able to beat Anderson Silva.
Us as
Like,
viewers have to see those guys beat Anderson.
yeah,
So.
yeah, like a lot of those guys, even Jake Paul shouldn't have been able to beat Anderson Silva. But
Oh my god, I forgot about that. Oh
I don't
god,
even
I
want
forgot
to.
about
I don't even want to think about that. But Anderson's one of those guys too. Like you talked about Rampage being frustrating. Anderson had some very frustrating fights.
that.
The Talis Litas fight, he didn't want to fight.
Yeah.
Damian Maya, he wouldn't fight.
Mhm.
Those are guys you could have got out in the first round, second round, and he just did not want to fight. But when he wanted to fight, obviously the second Chael Sonnen fight, he came to fight. Okami, he came to fight. Dan Henderson, he came to fight. Travis Luter, he came to fight. A lot of those, the Sandman when he moved up, he destroyed Forrest
Mhm.
Griffin. Like he was unbelievable, man. And then, yeah, like you said, when he did that front kick to the face, we'd never seen that you
Never.
know, before. And Belfort at that time, we're talking about not at that peak, but after that kick when he was TRT, Belfort was one of the scariest fighters in the world.
Absolutely.
TR, TRT Belfort was knocking people out, and they were leaving their feet. Like when he
Didn't
knocked out,
even look like a person. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
And the way he's moving and it's like he's able to move like that and he looks like his whole body's tensed up the entire
yeah,
time. He's like flying all over the, oh my god, yeah.
you
You
can
can
you
literally
can really
see like that
you
steroids
can see.
oozing out of the pores.
Yeah, you could really see the difference of him when he fights Chris Weidman after the TRT, and he's just like a saggy old man, and it's like, Holy fuck.
Yeah,
Steroids are real. So
yeah.
number 3, right?
Number three.
It was tough because I wanted Anderson here, but I'm actually not going to put Anderson. He would have fell maybe 6 or 7 for me. I'm going to put another exciting, fun fighter. Never been in a boring fight. I think both of us have been fans of this guy. Um, the first or second fight we saw him. He's a totally different fighter than what we saw him as. Dustin Poirier, unfortunately, is his kryptonite, but I'm gonna put him there, and that is Max Blessed Holloway.
Oh man,
Um,
great pick.
he claims he's the best boxer in the UFC. Unfortunately, he is not. But what a great, exciting fighter! What a guy that we never thought. We thought at one point we thought he was like a Charles Oliveira. We thought he was just a guy that could beat competition, but when he had to step up, he wouldn't be able to do it. Obviously, he got an old Aldo out of there, but then he really started dominating a lot of guys that were really tough. He dominated, Ricardo Lamas. He destroyed. He didn't destroy, but he beat Frankie Edgar. He destroyed Aldo a few times, and he was just going and beating everyone. Him and Volkanovski, the second fight was close.
Oh, absolutely.
The
God,
second
but
fight was close.
come on, God. How can you
Yeah,
pick a guy to cheer for between those two?
yeah, and then the third fight, I think Holloway. I love him because he is a volume striker. He goes out there, he throws down, but I think the volume striker against such a, well-rounded MMA fighter hurts him. I think
Right.
we could say that, if he wasn't such a volume fighter, he might have been able to pull out a win against Volkanovski if he could mix in a takedown or, Volk just does it all, right? But
Yeah.
if we're talking about my favorite fighters, it was either going to be him or Rodriguez, Yuri Rodriguez in number 3.
Yeah.
Yuri Rodriguez, I always say it, that guy is the dark horse, just like Tony Ferguson was the dark horse of the division at one point. Yuri Rodriguez, he is the interim champion right now. I know he's coming up for his title fight. I don't know if he's going to get it done or not, but both him and Max Holloway, one or two, him, Poirier, Holloway, very, very exciting fighters. Never in a boring fight. Holloway is a beast.
Yeah, man. You mentioned Yair. If we were doing entire top 10 knockouts, Yair's buzzer beater elbow to Korean Zombie
Yeah,
would definitely be.
but like we talk about the greatest chins in MMA, everyone talks about the Diaz brothers. This guy, Max Holloway's chin
Absolutely.
has been tested more times than anybody, and this guy just
Yeah.
stands there and will just be like, bring it right here, come right here in the
Yeah.
middle, and he'll swing it out with you. I think him versus Cantor was one of the coolest things ever. He's not even looking at him, dodging. I'm the
Yeah.
best boxer. I'm the
Yeah.
best. Yeah. So yeah, Max Holloway, man, flyweight champion, a big time volume striker, one of the toughest chins you'll ever see out there. Number 3 for me, man. I love Max Holloway.
Another great pick. This is another good one. That's three, eh? Oh, fuck. I've been one. Who am I knocking off here? Okay. Okay. I know who I got to go next. Okay. I got a guy I know you probably thought this was going to come up at some point. One of my original favorite fighters when I first got into MMA. That is um, French heavyweight kickboxer Czech Congo.
Oh, I know you love Czech Congo.
I was always a huge Czech Congo fan. I know we were talking in our last episode of video. We were talking video games, talking about how much like Street Fighter and how it felt like a Kumite. That's why I like the appeal of original UFC. I liked all these like bigger than life characters. I love this idea of this terrifying looking giant man from France that just kick your head off. I just thought he was like right out of a comic book. I thought he was so badass. And when I first started watching him, it was kind of his peak. He was flirting with contendership in the heavyweight
Yeah,
division. He never could get over the hump in the UFC.
no, Frank Mir killed
Tyler,
that quick.
hey,
Frank Mir killed that quick.
Yeah, I mean, he could knock most guys out, but he could be knocked out by most guys. You get him on the ground, he couldn't really do much, couldn't really get you off of him. But at the
No.
same time, he for some really entertaining moments. Really, actually, a lot of people forget gave a prime Cain Velasquez one of his biggest challenges
Oh
up until
yeah.
that point.
Yeah,
Well, actually, up
exactly.
until that point, it was his biggest challenge. He fought well against him, and I mean, God, how different would things be if fucking Chet Congo won that fight?
We talk about Czech Congo. The one of the greatest moments in UFC history is his comeback versus
Oh
Pat Barry.
yes.
I remember we were
Oh my
watching that
God.
fight. We were all in your living room, and we're like, "Oh, the fight's over." And then he got back
Yeah.
up, and we're like, "Oh, the fight's over." And then he knocked him out.
Yeah, we were standing up screaming. We're like, what? No, what? Oh! Then he lands that uppercut where he's what? What?
He got lucky.
Oh my God.
He's got lucky. Pat Barry is a good striker, but he's got a horrible chin. Pat Barry's one of those
Pat
guys that gets knocked out like he just got like shot in the head. Like it's
I was
bad,
gonna say
man.
Pat Barry's one of the funniest guys to get. Pat Barry is like number two under like Brandon Schaub for fighters I like seeing get knocked out.
Is it because he was grooming Rose at like when she was like 14?
Yeah, yeah. Stick to the game, man, Rose.
Yeah, that's like the rumor.
Is
I
that
had
right, eh?
I should have put Paulo Costa on here, yo. Even though like his fighting in the last couple years have been whatever, but he's fucking awesome now, yo.
I should put Costa Philippou on here.
Oh god, he was actually doing all right. He was doing all right until Luke Rocco kicked him in the liver.
Yeah, I think he was
I
doing
will,
all right. Michael Bisping called him Costa Philippou.
I
Costa
will say,
Philippou.
I will say this for all the younger fans and everyone making fun of Luke Rocco when he was in his prime, he was so talented,
We
so
didn't get to
talented.
see his prime should have been longer. That kick to the head fucked him up from TRT Vitor.
Yeah,
Also, he spent a good portion of his prime in Strikeforce.
yeah, and that fluky win Bisbing had against him.
Ah, I love Bisping.
Yeah,
Bisping whooped his ass again. Bisping whooped
yeah.
his ass too.
It's funny because everyone make fun of Bisbing. Oh, he's pillow fist, but then he always beats them by TKO.
Yeah, you don't need to have a lot of power if you can land act. I mean, look, John Jones doesn't have a lot of power. He's the greatest fighter of all time.
Yeah, so that's a good pick. Who'd you have at number three?
Chuck Congo.
Czech Congo.
Congo.
He's one of those guys from that Rampage camp. What was that camp again?
Yes.
Out of the UK. Him, Bisbing,
Wolf something.
Wolf Layer or something.
Wolf Lair, yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
So yeah, he had the same style as Rampage, a striker but couldn't wrestle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, number two.
Number
Um,
deuce.
number two. Okay,
I wonder if we're
arguably
gonna see one and two. I think we're gonna see one and two.
the consensus greatest fighter of all time. What can I say about this guy? So much talent. Like I said, when we first saw him, we knew he had him. My number two comes John Jones. He's not actually not
What's
my
your number
number.
two?
Yeah, he's not my number one. Um, the one thing that holds him back from being my number one, I'm not saying he did it or whatnot. He did get busted a few times. This is why. This is why I say it. I know Romero got busted. He said he didn't take it. And he ended up suing the company because it was tainted supplements, and he won like
Yeah,
21 million. I'm not
yeah, right.
saying John did that.
Romero's been on steroids since he was 10 years
Yeah.
old.
I'm not saying John did whatever. But what I'm
No, he did.
saying is, yeah, you got caught 3 or 4 times and you got away with it essentially. But as a top athlete in the UFC or any sport, you should know what you're putting in your body at all times. There's no excuse for you.
Yeah,
Oh, I went to the gym and someone offered me this. No, you're the top athlete. You're the only one of the only UFC fighters that was sponsored by Nike. You have to take responsibility for yourself. But man, like I said earlier, when we saw John fight, we knew he had it right away. He was one of our favorites back then. Even in that little poster, he was the first fighter on my little poster I made. Um, one of the one of the most nervous times fighters I have every time I watch a John fight. Me and you, we both get those nerves. We both
Yeah,
get we both get worried. We thought Rampage was a very tough challenge for him. I remember I was scared to death when he was fighting Shogun because these were the old heads that when we started watching UFC, they were still, the main event guys, and John was a skinny newcomer. He didn't have a lot of knockouts, and he was finishing our childhood heroes, right? He finished Shogun, he finished Rampage, he finished Machida, he destroyed Ryan Bader before that. Like he was just a
resume.
menace. I watched this heavyweight fight when he moved up. I thought Gain was going to put a little better performance on. I thought it was going to be more movement, striking, but John absolutely destroyed him.
Knocked him
He beat
down too.
he beat Daniel Cormier twice. I don't think people give Cormier much credit.
Oh,
Cormier is such a great fighter. Obviously, he'll always be, the number two of the John because John beat him. Obviously, they were overturned, but
yeah. Still
John,
happy,
still,
but
yeah, he still lost twice. The first one is not too bad. John was just doing cocaine the night before or whatever, so like that's not bad. But man, what a great
second
fighter!
one, man, he got
I
him there.
Yeah, I always thought Jones was a little scared of Gustafsson after that first fight because he didn't want to fight him
Oh,
for
he didn't.
years.
He didn't want that fight.
No, and then he finally took it when Gustafsson was kind of at the edge of like, I'm okay, but I'm not that good. And then he wiped the floor with him. He had those tough, he had those tough fights when he said he wasn't, into, he was unmotivated when he fought Riaz, he fought Santos, just really, really close fights. OSP, like it was just bad performances.
OSP almost made my top five.
Yeah, just really bad performances. Comes back as a heavyweight 3 years later, wins the title. Now we're seeing his final fight. He said is coming up with whoever he fights next. But man, what a incredible ride we've had being a John Jones fan. So he definitely comes in at number two of my favorite fighters of all time.
Yeah, roller coaster ride, especially
Yeah,
considering the guy never. You never expect to see so many downs in a guy's career for someone who's never lost.
yeah. Hey, yeah, Matt Hamill beat him.
Oh, homo. Sorry, I should.
Remember we were watching that fight and we were like in disbelief that he lost. He was just destroying him, but at 12 to
Oh my god,
6.
he was right because Matt Hamill was a. I mean, Matt Hamill was a guy like he was a deadly guy. Like he wasn't going to win no title, but he was just that step right below. He could fuck you up if on the undercard or the mid card.
Yeah,
Like
'cause even when John was on his rise and they're like, "Oh, this is a tough challenge," Vladimir Matyushenko and fucking John just took him down, got him in the
yeah,
crucible.
yeah, the janitor, David's dad.
Yeah,
I
put
forgot
him.
about the janitor. I forgot about that fight night. That was his
Yeah,
other fight night
yeah,
after Vera.
yeah. And then even with Vera, we thought that was going to be a tough matchup. Broke his face, destroyed Matyushenko, and then I think he fought Ryan Bader after that. You know,
Yeah.
man,
Grant
and then
Bear's a guy like guys our age or a little bit older. He was like what like he had hype almost like John Jones, but he just
yeah,
never.
never made it there. And then
Yeah.
remember when it was rumored that he was gonna fight Forrest Griffin, and Griffin's like, "I hope not."
Oh, John Jones. Yeah, I ain't fighting that guy. He'll beat my ass.
But yeah, man, what a brutal fighter! The first fighter we ever seen use that front leg sidekick to the knee. Rampage has
Oh,
gone on to
almost
say,
effective.
yeah, he's gone on to say that's ruined his career. He still feels it. Um,
Yeah.
a guy that fought Glover to share everything. Everyone said, the clinch was going to be Glover's game. John fought him in the clinch the whole fight.
Yeah.
He likes to fight you at your own game to show you that he's better.
Own style. Yeah.
He's a great fighter. I think I know who your number two and number one is. So go ahead and give me your number two.
My number two would be, in my opinion, the only guy that's a better strategist going to fights than John Jones. The ultimate mind of fighting, George St. Pierre.
Yep.
I mean, one of the guys that if you can make an argument for anybody alongside John Jones, he's definitely one of those guys you can put up there. Um, like the, he's the original modern MMA fighter. He was the first guy. He couldn't just do everything. He mastered everything.
Yeah,
I mean, there was times where it felt like he was the best boxer in the division when he was just jabbing the fuck out of guys like Josh Koscheck. Pretty much his entire career, he felt like he was the best wrestler in his division, if not in the world. Just dominant fighter. I mean, took a lot of shit in periods of his career because your traditional MMA fans, they, for whatever reason, always approach UFC like a fucking action movie and not a sport. They want to
yeah,
see the guys come out with reckless abandon, throw hands. It's like you wouldn't want your football team to come out and just throw deep passes the whole game. So why do you want your UFC fighters just come out and throw just haymakers? Like,
because
there's
we want blood.
exactly. I'd rather see my favorite guy win, to be honest. But there's
Yeah,
nothing GSP did better than fucking win. I mean, over a long period of time, he always had a hard time dealing with Dana White. Dana White never gave him no fucking credit. They
no,
always gave him a fucking hard time. Always shit on him in the media when he was their fucking best fighter. Um, yeah, just incredible. I think one of the most influential fighters. I think. I mean, how many guys came after him that molded their like their training methods after GSP? How many new things did GSP bring to the game? Training in the octagon,
yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
game planning. The game planning is the big one. I mean, like I say, like John Jones, that was one. As amazing a fighter as he is, like he has that like game planning mind. I think his is a little bit more, almost like it comes to him more naturally, and GSP's
Mhm.
is more
Yeah,
studying somebody and stuff.
yeah,
Like I feel like John is almost like he sees somebody once and he knows like their
yeah. What to do?
tendency.
So I'm just gonna go ahead and say my number one, so I can talk about GSP here. So my number one fighter is GSP. So now I can talk about him with
There we
you.
go.
But again, a master strategist, but it didn't come natural. I was a lot of training, a lot of studying. He's also said that's why he took some time off. You know, he couldn't sleep at night. He was just thinking about the fight so much. A guy that really changed his career after that Matt Serra fight. I remember
Yeah,
my first glimpse of George St. Pierre was that number two fight in Montreal, when he destroyed Matt Serra, and that really put me on the GSP boat. First of all, he was Canadian. We're Canadian. The guy looks like he's sculpted out of granite. Really a great ambassador for the sport.
yeah, wonderful guy.
Has never done anything wrong. He's never in the media for anything bad. Um, a guy that's fought the who's who in that welterweight division at the time. When he fought Koscheck, we were scared about that.
Cossack was a
Koscheck
monster back then at that
at
point.
that time, and I put him at my number one over Jones because I've never been more nervous in my life watching UFC. But when GSP fights, I'm gripping the couch. I'm gripping my pillow. My hands are sweating. I'm nervous. Um, I just love to see him win, man. Every time I think he's gonna be in trouble in a fight, he manages to use his striking to do what he does best, to get the guy to the ground. You know, his ground and pound is ferocious. You know, people can't get back up. You know, he showed heart in that Condit fight when Condit was a machine, took that head kick. You know, that was crazy. Took the head kick, took some ground and pound, got back up, 1-2, put him on his ass. Like, um,
Yeah, man.
the dream fight we never got to see, GSP versus Silva at that time. I think I heard them saying they wanted to make it. Um, who knows? They wanted to make GSP versus Khabib. Um, the money was there. Khabib just didn't want to do the fight. That's what I
Kind of
think
glad that
GSP.
didn't happen.
Yeah, at that point, GSP is an old man. Um,
Yeah.
I knew he was going to be able to beat Bisbing. That was a good choice from the comeback and fight
Knew he was
Bisbing,
going to beat Bisping.
get your middleweight title. But if you look at it, if he would have stayed, him versus Adesanya, Adesanya beats him. Him versus, well, I don't know. I don't
Adesanya
know.
definitely beats GSP. I do not think Adesanya. I could see that just being. I could see it being dominant one way or the other.
No, but what I'm saying is, I would want to see prime GSP. I don't want to see 37-year-old.
Oh no, of course not.
No, no. And him versus Whitaker, like that's a tough fight for a 37, 38-year-old. You know, at the time Romero was still in the division. Costa
Imagine
was,
the size difference. Holy fuck.
yeah. It was just bad matchup for that time. So he got out at the right time to retire again. But man, what a fun ride it was with GSP. His fight with BJ Penn number two, destroyed him. Thiago Alves was a machine,
Yeah, he
destroyed him.
was. He was.
Cost, Koscheck was knocking everybody out, destroyed him. One of the greatest hype promo fights you ever see. Him and Jake Shield, um,
Yeah.
destroyed him. He actually said he was so afraid of Jake Shields, and he was like that. He was so terrified, destroyed him. I thought Nate Diaz.
Worst
I mean,
matchups for GSP was
yeah,
Jake Shields.
I thought Nick Diaz, that is, had GSP. GSP looked a little tired in that third round. But if
Yeah.
the Diaz brother, the one thing that I hate about the Diaz brothers, stop talking and fight.
Yeah. Shut up, you uneducated fool.
Because like I don't get these guys. You could win the fight if you just stop talking.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
are you doing? Same with Romero. It's like Romero. What do you like? I just watched
Oh
him fight
God,
the guy.
Romero's one of the worst for that.
It's like, dude, just fight. That's all you have to
Yeah.
do. You can
Romero's a
win. But yeah, GSP, what a class act. What a guy that when I was working out, I used to watch workout videos, his training sessions. Just a guy that does it right by the book. A hardworking guy, eats well, trains well. He game plans well. He fights better than anyone I've ever seen. That Superman jab to low leg kick, such a beautiful combo. He sets up his takedowns so effortlessly.
he's
GSP,
also
man.
he always had a reputation as like the most legendary lady killer of all the UFC fighters too. He was apparently just a lady. He just pulled broads like nobody's business.
And the one thing I'll never get over, I always thought he couldn't grow hair, and now he has a full head of hair.
Yeah,
What?
I know he just pulls that shit out on us in retirement. Like, psych, I have body hair. I'm not Charlie Villanueva.
So yeah, GSP comes my number one. Let me hear your number one, buddy. I know what it is.
Number one. Yeah, it's
Oh,
John Jones. It is funny that we go GSP John Jones. I think a lot of people, those are their top favorite fighters. It is pretty funny the contrast. Like we said, GSP, the ultimate ambassador of the sport. John Jones, the exact opposite. It's like, as a fan, you literally, it's like you got to separate the artist from his art, kind of thing. Like you appreciate
yeah.
him as a fighter, and like I want no business of John Jones as a person or a human being. But as a fighter, I can
John
appreciate the hell out of the guy.
John definitely like a Mike Tyson of MMA, man. Just a guy that gets in
Or
trouble with the law.
yeah, I would say worse because like I've always been like skeptical about like Mike Tyson, like the violence towards women. Like I think a lot of it is like debated and stuff
Yeah. I think
in those instances.
all the celebrities and women claim rape. I think it's debatable.
Yeah.
Except Bill
Well, the
Cosby.
John stuff I feel like is a little sketchy. Well, I mean, we know that he definitely hit that pregnant woman's car and ran away.
We know for sure John is probably the worst husband or fiance ever. We know
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Yeah. But
We know
again, I'm not married to the guy. I just want to watch him fight.
that's it. Great fighter,
Uh,
man. Him and
yeah,
GSP,
absolutely.
they even trained together for years. Um, Under Greg Jackson, a mastermind of game planning. Him and Wink. I know Dana used to shit on them. Remember with Clay Guida? Oh, he's not even fighting. He's in
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But you go in there to win the fight. I actually thought Clay Guida beat Gray Maynard that fight, but that's no here or there. Man, those are our top five. Put your For anyone out there, put your top five down there. It doesn't matter who you pick. It doesn't matter what record. It's whoever you like seeing fight, man.
Yeah, I can't believe Thiago Silva didn't make mine.
Oh yeah, when he played Congo and broke Brandon Vera's nose.
Yes, dude, I loved it. And when
Man,
you're talking about steroid animals, like that guy was so juiced up.
so was Johnny Hendricks. He was on fire until
Johnny Hendricks, yes.
yeah, until they came out of the VADA testing, and then he couldn't win a fight to save his life.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Next week will be fully all wrestling. We will be going to
Exciting.
AEW Collision, and then we'll come back with another top 10 or just a basic talk about wrestling. We're not too sure yet. But
Yeah.
thank you for tuning in to our favorite UFC fighters. Please like and subscribe and put your favorite UFC fighters down below. We love to hear them.
Until next time, guys.
Until next time.